Today I'm doing a simple craft that you can do when you're bored. I've done a few of these before where I go through a list of art activities that you can do when you're bored. Or when you're feeling artistic, you don't have to be bored. Not really. I'm going to show a fun and relatively easy thing that can be done at a variety of different skill levels. You don't have to be incredibly creatively talented to do this technique, but you could be, and then you can still enjoy it as much. Everyone's included here. Yeah, that means you too. So let's just get to it. I'm going to make some salt water, and I mean like super salt. It just has to be like incredibly salty. And then I shake it until the salt is dissolved. I'm going to use watercolor papers. I got a lot of questions on what kind of paper that I use. I have been trying out some different papers to see which ones work really well with more wet mediums or with fluids. This is one of the papers that I can recommend. I'm going to use the A6 size. They come in 3 sizes from A4 to A5 to A6. I'm going to use the A6 size, which is a perfect size to fit on a card. And then I have my Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to add the colors on my surface, so on my desk. I spray the card with the salt water I just mixed, and I also spray some salt water by the inks. I pick up some paint with my brush, and then I add it on the card, and you can see if there's enough salt water on the card, because the salt water will push the color away a little bit. It will form sort of these spider webs that move the ink on your card on the places where your salt water is. If there's not enough, you can just add a little bit more, and I'm just going to make a random pattern. Just enjoy trying out this fun technique, and it will give you a little bit of a tie-dye look, which I think is pretty cool. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Distress Oxide sprays. So I'm adding it straight from the bottom. Make sure you shake them before you add your ink to your surface. You want the colors, the two parts of the colors, you want to mix that. And you know, when the bottom is clean bottom, we always go for a clean bottom. When the bottom is clean, then the ink is mixed well enough. Oh, I have my 2 bowls, and in the bowl, the blue bowl, there's my salt water, and in the red bowl there is just regular water. So I added a bit of the salt water on my card, and I added some ink in the corner. And now I'm going to make a little pattern. So I made a stripe, and then I make some side stripes. Now you can see the ink is walking into the little side stripes, and this is the ink just moving by itself basically, and I'm helping the color a little bit along because I thought it was cute if they have a little bit more of the side thingies going on. So I'm adding my next stripe, and I'm going to pick up my next color, and I dip it in the color stripe or in the water stripe. Now my colors are mixing, but that's totally fine. They can do that if they want to. You can also add your inks in paint palettes. I have one with a lid on, and I couldn't find that, of course. And when I was done filming, yay, there it was. But if you add your inks in a paint palette, you can let them dry, and then you can use your leftover inks again. Once they're dry, you just reactivate them with water, so less waste. We love less waste, don't we? So I'm closing in with my lines next to the little side stripes. I'm just trying to let them touch really carefully to see if I can make them move a little bit more. Now I'm going to use my 4th color, and I'm going to add just a little bit more. You can see that I start with a little bit of a gap between the 2 colors before I move in and leave like a really fine line. It's easy to do it this way because then you have some space to play. And now I'm adding a little bit of these stripes also on that side. So I'm going to just play around, and it's sort of doodling with a brush. If you're looking for some inspiration on what to design or a pattern that you would like to make, then check out tie-dye patterns on Pinterest, because on Pinterest there's lots of inspiration to find, and that will give you some great ideas to start with. So I put that card aside to dry, and I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to make some stripes. And if they aren't straight, that's totally fine, and no sweat, don't worry about that, because this will give you that artsy effect a little bit more, and it's also more tie-dye realistic. Now I'm using my heat tool to dry the card, but you can also let it air dry. Make sure that it's dry before you add your next layer unless you want a blended look, because wet on wet will blend and wet on dry, that will layer. So I want a layer for the next one, and this will slightly blend because it is watercolor and it will react to water, but it will not blend as much as when you leave everything wet. I hope someone didn't know that yet, so you are learning something new here, which would be so very cool. I'm adding my last stripe, and I'm going to add my last stripe of ink, my last color of ink. This is reminding me of a tablecloth we used to have. My mom had one in green and orange, which was like the weirdest color combo ever then, but well, now I'm combining everything, so nothing's weird anymore. I'm going to add a little bit of Pixie powder, because Pixie powder is shiny and sparkly, and I love shiny and sparkly. So I'm going to add some salt water to my cardigan. For this card I'm going for a big paint spot in the background, and I want a bit wonky, so not too organized to say. And it's so pretty to see the color ink move in the salt water, and the salt water does really make a difference. Compared to regular water, it will not move as much. Salt water will push the color away a little bit. It gives you lots of texture too. I made sure my first layer was dry. You can use your heat tool or let it air dry. I used the central heating this week because it was so cold, and it's almost June, which is kind of ridiculous, but here we are. It was great weather to be indoor crafting, so that's what I did. And then I'm going to add my next lines with the salt water, and then the next lines with the color. And when the colors aren't overlapping, you can add another line, that's no problem. But make sure that you dry them in between if you want them layered instead of blended. So now I'm just making a stripy pattern. And when I'm going to make some really fine lines, so I touch the paper with just the tip of the brush. So I've added a bunch more stripes, and so this gives you a really fun watercolor tie-dye effect, and this is way easier, I think, than real tie-dyeing with clothes, with rubber bands and dye and washing and all that fuss, things that you really don't want to do when you're bored. And now I'm going to make my last card, and I'm going to make a doodle smudge in the middle. Just some doodling with my brush, and this is just fun, just try it. And now this is fun. I'm adding my ink, and look at that, it's moving, but it's pushing the other ink that was already in the salt water a little bit away. So I'm starting out with a bit more space in between, and I make the white space in between the color spaces a little bit smaller as I go along. You can do this also with other inks. You can try it with basically any ink that can be diluted with water or cleaned with water. That can work as a paint. The only thing you need to keep in mind that some ink will be more opaque and other ink will be more translucent, so that's the only thing. But well, just try it to see if it works, because well, it's another fun option to use your inks. I think this makes another fun background for a card, and it's always nice to have some backgrounds on hand, and you can use them like they are, or you can add a sentiment, or well, you can go any way you like it. Now that's it. Fun, easy and very relaxed, and now you try it. Or watch another video, whatever feels best for you right now. And I will see you in the next video, and in the meantime, make sure to keep on crafting.